Hello again, and it's time for another project. Today we're going to do some router work and a little bit of scroll saw work to basically cut out the character on this Tommy Pickles. He's from the Rugrats cartoons, the baby of them all, I believe. And the idea, we're going to route it all out, basically removing all the white sections and just leaving those black lines. And then we're going to inlay it all with resin mixed with the appropriate colours. So it'll be white for the nappy diaper for you American guys, white for the eyes, and a little blue top on there, and the proper near enough skin tone for the rest of the body. And it measures in at 13 inches by roughly 9 inches across. We've printed our image off, we've stuck it down to 12mm plywood today. I find plywood works fine, but you can do this on any wood that's going. Should have any issues. We've stuck it down, and I like to pop a bit of carbon paper underneath. Nice fresh carbon paper, not something that looks like this. This is used on every one of my projects. And I draw around it all with a pen, pencil, whichever you prefer. Some routers have been known just to stick that straight to the wood and route over the top of the paper. I've tried it once, it's just far too messy and too much like hard work for me. So I'll just take the extra 5 minutes just to draw it all out like so. And that way you can use that template over and over again, should you need be. What I prefer to do is, once I've drawn it all out, I take 5 minutes just to shade in the areas you either want to remove or you want to leave. We're going to shade in the areas that we're going to leave today, obviously. So all these leg sections will be removed, all the clearer parts of the plywood will be removed, just leaving the nice black frame afterwards. Like I say, and we'll fill that all in with resin. If resin's not your thing, you could pop paint in there just as easy and sand it down. Remember, it is plywood, so not too much sanding involved, and then you can go around and paint the actual framework black afterwards, whatever colour you prefer. But for me, resin on this one. Now, for routing out purposes, as always, we're going to start off with our little, what they call CNC bits. They have a longer title, carbon, computerized, BMPs, it's all a fancy name, but little CNC bits. If you Google that, Amazon or eBay, you'll come up with these. They do have a small shaft on them, a 3.175mm. That's basically the shaft there, and that is a Dremel size shaft. That will fit a Dremel, if a Dremel is your preference, with the little router attachment to the bottom, and that will be fine on a small project. But for my 1/4 inch router, we require what they call a adapter reducer collet. They're going to take it today? Maybe not. And that's simply just a little tube, and you slide your router bit into there. That now is a 1/4 inch shaft on it, 6.35mm, and that will fit your 1/4 inch router, no problem. If your router takes 1/2 inch shaft bits, shanks, you're going to need a bigger adapter, obviously. We will pop that in there. We do all our line work, always up to the line, never route out on the line, because you've got a small section like this. By the time you've routed on the line there, gone down 3mm, and that one, you're going to alter that one. So we always up to the line, and if you, when we remove the middle section, up to the line there. Basically trying to leave that as near as we can. We'll go around all the bits with the CNC bit, 15° on this one, and that literally is just the angle of that cut at the end. Doesn't matter too much for us, as we are putting resin in. Once we've done that, we can remove that, and I'll pop on one of these end milling bits. These are fantastic. Excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold. These end milling bits are fantastic for routing out with. We get one that will fit into our areas, and we simply pop that into the same adapter collet, set it to the same depth. I made a little gauge like so. You can buy depth gauges. That's mine there. I know it's 3mm because it's the same depth as one of your 3.175mm bits, and that's deep enough for paint or resin. There's no need to go any deeper. You're just going to be wasting your resin. So we'll set it to the same depth, remember, and simply go around and remove the remainder of the wood. But first, we'll pop in the CNC bit. We'll set it to 3mm, and then we can start routing this one out. Once it's all routed out, obviously, we'll come in and we'll use a scroll saw and basically cut it all out. We'll talk about that nearer the time. Let's route it out first. We've made it all the way round with our 20-degree CNC bit in the end. I did try a 15 one on the sample there, and it was either worn or just wasn't quite cutting as nice as it could, so we popped on a 20-degree. You can just see the angle of it. Like I say, it doesn't really matter about the degree of the cut, as we're going to fill it mostly in with resin anyway. But we've gone round all the lines. Remember, just up to the lines, you should still be able to see a little bit of that pencil line when we finish going round. We'll go around with a Dremel and a little engraving bit just to tidy it up. But for now, you can see from that, that's definitely near enough for what we want. So we will remove the CNC bit. You will get a lot more projects out of that, guaranteed. I'm going to pop in one of these end milling bits. These are fantastic because they route out the side as well as the bottom, so there won't be a lot of sanding down. It will be fairly smooth. We'll try this one for now, only because we know we needed it to fit inside these little small sections here. And you'll notice here, as we've gone round, we've removed certain bits with the CNC bit, so we can pop this in our router, just set it to that depth here, and we know we'll be at the same height to basically remove all the remaining template there. Okay, we'll do that next. Right, we've made it all the way round with those end milling bits. They've cleared out really nice. I've had no problem with those. I did have concerns with this plywood about losing a couple of toes, but we've managed to keep those all in place. And same as Tommy's little fingers there, we haven't lost any of them. Now the only issue I've got with this one on this occasion, and it's the look of the drawer as regards to plywood, we've got a bit of a rough void in there. Plywood's made of different layers. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 in this one. So obviously some layers aren't better than other ones. You can see a little hole in there. Those kind of little things, they can be filled in as you go along. But unfortunately on this back section here, you can see from that, if I get a better angle, there you go. There's actually a, we'll call it a split, shall we? Even though it's not a split. There's a delve going right across there. Now lucky for us, we are going to use resin, and we can cover all that up with the resin. However, if you were going to paint the back of these, that's going to have to be filled in first, or it's just not going to look as good as. So for me personally, when I do plywood projects, I more or less 99% use resin to fill them in with, inlay them with, just for this sole purpose of that. But apart from that, you can see it's looking well. It's all good to go. Next stage for me, like on all my little videos, just want to give it a little more of a general tidy up. I like to use these engraving bits for the Dremel there, just cheap things off eBay, nothing special. And they attach them to the end of my flexi cable. These are perfect, and that just attaches to your Dremel. And now I use this just to go inside there and just give it a little tidy up around these little areas to get these little dusty things off that we need to get off. We don't have to focus too much on the background, remember, that is quite smooth. That's smooth enough anyway, because remember the resin is going to cover all that. So a little general tidy up, And then we'll come in with some sandpaper. We can find some. We'll break a little piece off. You don't have to get too crazy. I like to break a little piece off like so. And that's just enough to get in there. Just take that sharp edge off. And then we're going to cut it out on a scroll saw after that. Just a quick tidy up first. And then when we come back, we'll get this scroll saw out and literally cut all around this. You could leave this on here if you wanted to. And literally route out the background and come up to the edge and make yourself a kind of framing all the way around. But for me personally, on this one, we are going to cut it out completely. But let's give it a little tidy up first. Right, that's enough general tidying up for me. You can see from that, we've rounded off those edges just very slightly, removed the pencil lines. Obviously we'll do the little bit more sanding once we've cut it out. But you can see from there, we've gone all the way around. And the little Tommy's looking happy enough at this moment in time. Now, next stage for me, I'm going to cut this out, just because I prefer to cut them out on this scroll saw. Just a quick one with regard to your blades. There's 3 types of blades that I know of. You got your basic pin blade. They come on your more basic sword, shall we say, and they just hook on top and bottom like so, and you take your tension up. With all your blades, they want to feel smooth on the way down and rough on the way up. That way you know you've got your blade in the right way. That will cut this out, no problem. There's nothing too technical here. If it was really detailed, they do a pinless blade, and they have clamp at the top and bottom. Same with your teeth, and they are very, very small. You might just see that. They come on your more expensive saws. A lot of your more professional guys tend to use those. For me personally, I like to do what they call a spiral blade. And with the spiral blade, the teeth spiral the full length of the blade like so. So you could cut in any direction. With these 2 blades, you've got to push your wood into the blade, if that makes sense, to cut it. So you would come down, and there's a lot of turning and twisting. With these, we could basically start there and cut this full piece out without turning the wood at all. They're not for everybody, and people or folk either love or hate them, but I just prefer the spiral blade. Unfortunately, with my old Draper scroll saw over in the corner there, it only takes pin blades. So any pinless blade, be it spiral or the pinless one over here, I have to use what they call these adapter clamps, and there's different variations of that. That will be top and bottom, and that just hooks on like so. Same with these spirals, they also want to feel smooth on the way down and rough on the way up. Right, I'll pop that into the scroll saw, set it all up ready to go, and we're literally going to cut this out first, and I'll do a bit more sanding just to get rid of those pencil lines, and then we'll look at the next stage, which will be to stain it or paint it or spray it before we put in our coloured resin. But let's cut it out first on the scroll saw. Right, that's him all cut out now. It's all nicely cleaned. We've gone round and we've took all those little bits off the back there. A bit of sandpaper. Now we're ready for the next stage, which is to paint or stain. Now originally I was just going to paint this black or spray it black, just as easy. I do prefer to brush paint. But I found good old dark teak, and I think there's just enough in there to finish this off staining wise. And once that's nicely dry, we'll put a bit of varnish on. I'll explain near the time. But for now, we're just going to cover it all with a dark teak. It's easy just to do the full piece. In the past, I've literally tried to do the top section like so. And you can see where it's gone to the section underneath. And when I put my resin on top, if it's not thick enough, you will see that dark section underneath. So it's better just to do the whole piece. It spreads well, it goes on really easy, and it dries fine. So we will do the full piece in this. Just get it on there, no problem. Let it all soak in. Not forgetting to do all those side sections there as well. Then we'll let it dry in. See what it's like. Give it a rub down with a little cloth if you wanted to. And then we'll see what it's like when it's nicely dried. And then we'll be on to the next stage. I'll just cover this completely, making sure we get all those side walls. When we come to put our resin in, we're not going to fill it to the top. We want it just off those tops of those woods there, if you know what I mean. That way we can still feel it, and we know that it's been routed out. We don't want it completely flush, if that makes sense. So I'll continue, fill all this in, and then when we come back, we'll pop a bit of varnish on. So we've got all our stain on. That's all nicely dried now. And that's plenty near enough what we want. And we've got all those side walls done as well. And we even popped a little bit on the back on this one for some reason. So now all we've got to do next is put a bit of varnish on this. 3 reasons. Basically, one, because I do like a nice shine to my projects, just to finish them off with. 2, the varnish will hopefully seal all these back sections, should we say. Hopefully stop less of those little bubbles coming from the resin. And thirdly, on certain woods, I don't have a lot of trouble with plywood, to be honest. It will seal the side walls of that routed out area. If we hadn't put the stain on, and if you're using paints, just the same, paints or resin, because we've cut into the wood, imagine the grain of the wood and we've cut into it. It's basically like we've opened all the straws up, let's call it, and your paint and resin could leak into those side walls and basically bleed into the wood, so you won't get a nice crispy edge to it. So there is wood sealants out there, but for me, all I tend to do is just spray a bit of varnish on, and hopefully that will seal those side walls, seal the bottom, plus give it a nice shine on top. Nothing too fancy, just a 151 today, whatever we can find. And it will be a simple case of spraying this over. That will also darken the wood down, the plywood. Just gives it a nice, better finish. And I'll do this a couple of times, just making sure we get that back section done as well. And you can see from that how dark it's gone. We'll go outside once it stops raining, of course, and do all these side walls. But basically, we'll just get a nice shine on it. Now that's all ready now for filling in with resin. I will let this dry, pop another coat on just to be sure. So when we come back next time, we'll go and find some resin and basically start filling this one in. Right, that varnish is nicely dry, and we can see from that it just gives enough shine to say it's a finished project. And hopefully it sealed that plywood in. It just gives a helping hand as regards to when we put our resin in. Now the resin today is Vista 1, as always for now. It's a 2-part resin. You have A, your resin, and B, your hardener. This is what they call a 1-to-1 mix. So how much you put on A, you put the exactly same amount of B. Some resins are 2-to-1, 3-to-1, and so and so. And this is measured by volume. Some resins you will measure by weight. So just look into that. Some resins are deep pour resins. Some resins are just for your smaller projects like this. I like to use these little plastic party cups from our mixing side of things. They're ideal because they have little grooves on the side, as you can see there, and I tend to measure up. We'll go for five grooves. We'll call it for A, the resin, and obviously you want exactly the same for B, your hardener. So up 5 of those, and we'll basically pour the B into that one, and we will pour the A into that one. Once they're both measured up to the right amount, I just simply pour one into the other. They do say empty both into a third container. Personally myself, it's not something I've ever done, and I've never had any issues. Once we've got that all nicely mixed together, we will be using just acrylic paints today for our colours. I've googled the image itself, and they do vary as regards to slightly different colorations, so I think I found the one nearest to what we want. And we just simply just have our resin mix, and we just squirt a bit in there, give it a nice mix around, and basically start filling this one in. Now for mixing purposes, same again, just cheap plastic knife, fork, spoons. These are normally white, but I can only get these clear ones today. These are ideal for mixing. Plus, they have a nice lip on the inside there, so you can just scoop up the small amounts if you need to get to these more tighter areas. Once we've got our resin in, we'll simply just go around with a cocktail stick just to feed it along and help it along its way. And once we've done each section of resin, we need a little lighter, basically just so we can pop that on, and we just skim over the top like so, and that just helps bring any air bubbles to the top, and hopefully they'll all disappear. And we'll do it a couple of times as we go along the project. Okay, for now I'll simply just mix our Vista 1 resin together, and then when we come back, it'll all be nicely mixed, and we can start separating it into separate containers. Personally myself, for me, I'd rather mix small amounts like so than mixing half a beaker full, and then you're getting a bit panicky as time's getting on and it starts to stiffen up on you, and you've got to try and do this in bits and bobs. So smaller amounts, mix more often than mixing a lot. Plus also at the end of the project, you don't want a big load of resin left over that you can't do anything with. So I'll mix this, and when we come back, we'll pop our first colour in and start filling Tommy Pickles in with colour, and hopefully it'll come to life as we start filling in with that resin. Okay, I'll mix it up first. Okay, there's our resin nicely mixed up. Now obviously we don't want to mix full amount of one colour for the little bits we're going to do, so I tend to just mix a little sample, and then we just separate it into a couple of containers. We want a little bit in that one, that's going to be for the yellow, and there's hardly any of that. We'll have the blue in this one, and there's a little bit left for the middle piece of the mouth, which we will fill in as we go along. Remember, with resin, you want the proper mask on, proper gloves on. Please don't follow me by example, and plenty of ventilation in your room. Now the colour we're going to do first, we're going to do the blue on his little t-shirt there. I think that's plenty more in there, so it's a simple case of popping in your colour like so. That'll do for that one. It seemed to come out quick enough. Give it a nice mix round. Now the colours might look different as regards to using the mobile phone to film with, but you can look at that, and if it doesn't look quite right, you can always add a little bit more. They do say 10% of colour per whatever quantity you mix with the resin. Personally myself, I'll just put in what I think it needs, and I've never had any issues. I've never had anything that hasn't worked out or hasn't set or cured on me. This is a nice blue in there. As I'm looking at it through the camera, it looks more like a purple, but hopefully the colours will be better when we come to fill it in. So we've got our piece there now. So we can use our spoon, remember, little scoops on the end there, and if you just start filling this one in. We'll speed things up a bit so we're not boring you too much with these standard things all the time. Okay, let's start filling this one in. And you can drop a bit in like that. It will level out slightly, but if not, remember, just get your little cocktail stick just help feed it on its way, like so. And we want it just to be below that wood that we've done. And we can always add a little bit more in. Okay, we get the general idea from that. I'll continue, speed things up a bit, and basically just fill this in. Right, that's our last bit gone in. So everything's nicely filled up now. We can see from that. So now all we do now is literally go over it with a lighter. I've been doing this as we've been filling the project. And all those little bubbles just all disappear. Right, we'll put this to one side for a good 24 hours. Get a nice cover for it. Something to cover it over with. Any flies, dust, they will find it, that's for sure. Right, we'll put it to one side and then we'll come back tomorrow and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, that's it. This little project is finished. Now it's less than 24 hours later and everything's nicely cured on there. It's nice and solid, as you can see from that. Some resin groups recommend 30 days to fully cure. Personally myself, I do think that's a little bit over the top. I'll be quite happy to hang this up today with no issues, and it's been less 15 hours, 24 hours kind of thing. And for hanging purpose, a simple little hook loop there on the back will be fine for that one. It does freestand, this one, if you had it on a straight surface, or you can put a little base on it, but this will be a wall hanger, no problem. Just a nice little project for us. So remember, it's been routed out on 12mm plywood. We used our CNC bits to do all those lines with. Remember, you want that adapter collet, 6.35mm, and then these lovely end milling bits to clear it all out with. That cleared out, no problem whatsoever. We had no issues, and we still even managed to save the little toes there. Still got his little toes, and his fingers are all still intact. Then we use the Pegas number 5 spiral blade on a scroll saw to cut it out. Once that was all done, nice tidy up with that flexi cable with an engraving bit, and then we stained it with dark teak stain just to finish it off. And then for sealing wise, bit of spray. For me personally, it's just to give it a nice shine on the wood, but obviously it must have sealed as well, because we have no issues. We've got no bleeding. All these lines, there we go, all them lines are all nice and crispy, and we've had no problems whatsoever with that. So that certainly worked, and plus you gave a little shine on that wood at the front as well. And for the resin side of things, just a little Vista one of my favourites at the moment, but I've used 3 or 4 different types of resins in the past. And for colours, just acrylic paints. There is dyes out there, powders, inks. You basically find what you're happy and what you're comfortable with. Now the only issue I had with this, and if you remember that face, the state of the plywood when we actually routed it out, we did have that void going across there. Sorry, we had that void going across there, and as I filled the resin, it actually started leaking out there, and I had previously filled this in with a bit of wood filler. So it leaked out slowly, so I literally just put a bit of tissue paper in there and just let it sit for an hour or so, just to firm up. Remove the tissue paper and basically just filled in the rest of it. Now when I did fill it all in, as I came over with the lighter, remember, just get rid of those air bubbles, we had a little leakage on the top there. You can just see that. I'll put a bit of felt tip on that just to colour that in. And also the thumbnail down there, back of his thumb, we had leakage out there as well. So I don't know if I've just picked out a bad batch of plywood because that is the first time for me I've had one of my projects leak out the side there. So just bear that in mind with your resins. Always keep an eye on it for the first half of an hour or so, just to make sure you haven't got any silly leakages. But a bit of painter's tape on there, and if you just stuck it to the side, that blocked it off, and that was that problem sorted out in a matter of seconds. So that's it. Little Tommy Pickles is finished. It's routed out on 12mm plywood, measured in at 13 inches by 9 inches across, and we inlaid it with Vista 1 resin mixed with acrylic paints. Nice little project, this one. Thank you very much for watching.